The wind swept across the dead world, carrying dust like ash across a silent desert. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of a vast canyon, staring at the thing buried in its depths. It wasn't a mountain or rock formation. Its black surface shone against. The red sand like polished glass, smooth yet broken in places, as if something enormous had tried to claw its way out. From orbit, his scanners had called it nothing more than an abandoned structure. But standing here, face to face with it, Ethan knew it was no building. It was a prison. His ship rested behind him, engines cooling, but he could not look away. The prison pulsed faintly under the dim light of the planet's dying sun, almost like a heartbeat. He descended slowly, every step crunching against the stone path that led into the canyon. His breathing grew louder inside his helmet, he reminded himself. He had come here for salvage, for discovery, for credits that could pay off his debts back on Titan Station. But when he reached the base and raised his gloved hand to touch the surface, he felt something more than cold metal. The wall shivered, not like stone or steel, but like flesh responding to touch. His heart slammed in his chest as he stumbled back. The prison rippled outward from the spot where his hand had been, as though the entire structure had awakened from a long sleep. Before he could retreat to the ship, a voice filled his skull, not through his ears, not through the combs. Directly inside his mind, "I am waiting, human." Ethan froze. His visor fogged with his quick breaths, eyes wide. He looked around wildly, half expecting someone to stand behind him. No one, only the endless desert and the towering black wall before him. It knew his language, his name, whispered in a tone low and heavy, echoed again inside his head. "Ethan. Cole, you came." He staggered back another step, tripping on uneven stone. His survival instincts screamed at him to leave, to get back into his ship and burn atmosphere, to never look back. But something in the voice rooted him in place. It wasn't hostile, it wasn't even commanding. It sounded patient, ancient, like it had been waiting for far longer than human history itself. Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. "What are you?" he whispered, though his words fogged against his helmet glass. For a moment, there was silence. The canyon winds howled, kicking dust against the prison walls. Then a faint glow crawled across the black surface. Strange lines, patterns, symbols, all shifting and reshaping as though alive. He blinked, stepping closer, staring in disbelief. The symbols twisted until they formed shapes he recognized: letters, human letters. His name spelled across the wall in light. Cole. His stomach dropped. This wasn't random. This thing wasn't reacting to just anyone. It knew him. He reached up again, his hand trembling. "How do you know me?" he demanded, louder this time. The moment his palm pressed against the surface, the world fell away. His vision blurred, the canyon dissolving into darkness. He saw flashy screams of alien soldiers locked in battle, massive ships burning in orbit, and chains of crystal holding luminous beings in cells. His mind reeled as the visions came faster, each one heavier than the last. A great war, a prison forged to hold something terrible. And at the center, a being of light, glowing brighter than a sun, staring at him with eyes that pierced through space and time. The same voice spoke, clearer now, filled with both grief and fire. "I was sealed here, waiting, watching for you," then gasped and tore his hand away. The canyon returned, his knees buckling beneath him as he collapsed to the sand. Pulse pounded in his ears, sweat running down his spine despite the cold. He scrambled backward, hands shaking uncontrollably. The wall no longer glowed, but he could still feel it humming, vibrating faintly in tune with his own heartbeat. He wanted to run. He wanted to forget this place, to erase it from his charts and warn no one. But deep inside, he knew he couldn't. He had touched it. It had touched him. And whatever was locked inside had made its mark. Ethan stumbled to his feet, casting one last glance at the prison. For the first time, he realized it wasn't entirely silent. A low thrum pulsed in the air, too low for ears, but heavy enough to feel in his bones. It was alive, waiting, and now it had spoken his name. Ethan did not sleep that night. The prison's whisper lingered in his head like an echo he could not. Silence, repeating his name in the dark until he finally gave up and sat in the cockpit of his ship with the lights dimmed. Staring out at the black walls below, his fingers tapped against the console as his scanners fed him lines of data, but none of it made sense. The structure absorbed every kind of pulse he sent, bending signals back like reflections in a mirror. No readings, no interior map, nothing. And yet, when his hand had touched it, it had answered him. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted, but unable to tear his gaze away from the canyon. He had crossed half the system, chasing forgotten wrecks, trading scraps to stay alive. But this wasn't scrap. This was something beyond human reach. Something that had known his name before he even arrived. By dawn, he could no longer resist. He packed his gear scanners, torchlight, a field recorder, and descended once more into the canyon. The walls seemed taller in the early light, the prison darker than before, as if it absorbed the sun itself. When he reached the base, the wind died suddenly, unnaturally, and the air felt heavy, charged with static. He raised the scanner and aimed it at the surface. But the readings spiked and then burned out completely, the display going black. "Great," he muttered, shaking the useless device. Then the voice came again, soft but clear. "Do not be afraid. You are meant to come." He froze, staring at the wall, his recorder blinking faintly as it captured his ragged breathing. "Why me?" His words sounded weak against the silent canyon. For a moment, no reply. Then the surface shifted, and once more the strange symbols appeared. This time they did not spell his name. They arranged themselves into word sentences. "You carry the blood of those who chained me." Ethan stepped back, his mind racing. Chained. Bloodline. He had never believed in destiny, in prophecy, in any of the nonsense he had heard in spacer bars. But standing here, watching alien symbols morph into his own language, he felt a chill deeper than fear. His family? His ancestors? Could that voice truly know? He pressed his hand against the wall again, despite every instinct screaming at him not to. Light poured outward, bright veins racing across the surface like cracks spreading in glass. His body stiffened, his vision burning. White. Once again he was pulled into Vision's armies of tall, armored beings marching in perfect silence, carrying weapons that shimmered with energy. Vast ships, unlike any human design, with sails of living fire gliding across the stars. He saw them, constructing the prison, their hands shaping matter with impossible precision, their voices chanting in a tongue that shook the very ground. And then he saw something else, something inside the prison. Figure, humanoid yet radiant, wrapped in chains of crystal that glowed like lightning. It struggled, roaring silently, its light dimming as the chains tightened. Ethan's breath caught as its head lifted, and though its face was alien, its eyes locked directly on him. They were eyes filled with sorrow. And then, to his horror, it smiled at him. The vision snapped away and Ethan staggered back, his knees hitting the sand. The wall pulsed once, as though satisfied, then fell silent again. His heart thundered in his chest as he gasped for air. The recorder was still blinking, still active, but when he checked it, the device displayed nothing but static. No voice, no symbols, just him. He sat in the dust for what felt like hours before he finally spoke aloud, his voice low. "What are you?" For the first time, the reply came not in whispers, not in echoes, but in a single word carved into the black, wall by light itself. Waiting. The ground trembled faintly beneath his feet, as though something inside had shifted. Ethan staggered to his feet, staring up at the vast structure, his throat dry, his body cold with sweat. He didn't know what it was waiting for, or why it had chosen him. But he knew one thing. His prison was not just a relic. It was waking up, and he was no longer a visitor. It was part of it now. The third night came with no stars. Storm had rolled over the planet, thick clouds swirling above like a lid sealing the world shut. Lightning flashing red against the dust-choked sky, Ethan stayed awake in his ship, staring at the black structure. Below, as if it might crawl out of the canyon and devour him, every attempt to leave failed. His ship's engines, flawless in every test, refused to ignite past a shallow hum. Navigation froze, thrusters stuttered. It was as if the prison had bound him here. He cursed and slammed the console, but deep down he already knew he was not allowed to leave. The storm raged through the night until the hull rattled, and with every lightning strike the black surface of the prison lit faintly, glowing with veins of light that stretched across its body like a map of nerves. And each time it glowed, the voice grew louder. "Come inside." Ethan had resisted long enough. By morning, when the storm finally broke, he packed every tool he had left and descended into the canyon once again, heart pounding with every step. The structure loomed taller, stranger, its surface crawling with faintly glowing lines, as though the storm had awakened something that would never sleep again. He placed his hand against the wall, and this time, instead of visions or symbols, the surface dissolved beneath his touch, like liquid glass. The black wall parted, revealing a narrow corridor leading into darkness. He froze, his hand trembling at his side. The air pouring out was cold and naturally cold, the kind that gnawed at his skin through the suit. His helmet sensors crackled, with interference, but beyond that, he could hear something faint, like distant breathing. "God help me," he muttered, stepping forward. The wall sealed behind him, with a sound like stone grinding shut. The corridor stretched endlessly, black walls alive with slow, pulsing veins of light. His torch beam was useless against them. The light seemed to swallow it whole. His footsteps echoed unnaturally, each one repeating again and again, until he felt like an army was walking beside him. The deeper he went, the louder the whispers became. Not one voice now, but many, overlapping, crowding his mind. "You should not be here. You were late. You were chosen. The chain-bearer returns." Ethan gritted his teeth, pushing forward, until the corridor opened into a vast chamber. He froze, his jaw tightening as his eyes widened. Dozen cells hung in the air like floating shards of crystal, each one glowing faintly, each one holding a figure inside. Some looked humanoid, others monstrous, their forms twisted or obscured by the glowing chains that bound them. They hung suspended in silence, unmoving yet alive, their faint breaths fogging the inside of their prisons. The sight made his stomach turn. This was not a prison for one. This was a vault of countless beings, sealed away like artifacts in a tomb. And then he saw it, the largest cell, in the center of the chamber, glowing brighter than the rest. The figure inside was the same he had glimpsed in the visions, tall, radiant, its body pulsing with a light that was both beautiful and terrifying. Chains of glowing crystal bound its arms and chest, keeping it still, yet its head was raised, its eyes burning like twin suns, staring straight at him. Ethan's breath caught. He wanted to look away, but could not. The being spoke, and this time the words came not as whispers, but thunder rolling through his very bones. At last. The sound knocked him to his knees, his torch clattering to the floor. He struggled to breathe, his chest tight, as if the very air obeyed this being's will. "Ethan Cole. The blood of those who built my chains, the hands of those who will break them." Ethan forced himself to his feet, shaking his head in disbelief. "Don't understand," he gasped. "Why me? What do you want from me?" The figure leaned forward against its bindings, the chains groaning as cracks of light spread across them, to be free. A sound rippled through the chamber low, rising like the moan of 1,000 voices awakening at once. The other cells trembled faintly, their prisoners stirring for the first time. Ethan's stomach dropped. He had not freed one voice. It awakened them all. Ethan stumbled backward, his boots scraping against the glassy floor as the voices filled the chamber, hundreds of whispers pressing against his mind all at once. Some were pleading, others were screaming, and some laughed, with a sound so hollow it made his skin crawl. He covered his ears instinctively, but it was useless. These voices did not come from the air. They were inside him, the central figure. Leaned forward again, its radiant form straining against its glowing crystal chains. Every movement cracked the bonds slightly, releasing sparks that stung Ethan's eyes. "Do not fear them," the being thundered, its voice drowning out the whispers. "They are broken. They are jealous. I am the one who will save you." Ethan's throat was dry, his voice trembling. "Save me? From what?" The being's glowing eyes pierced into him, unblinking. "From yourself? From your people? They do not tell you the truth of what you are, but I can. Break these chains, and I will show you." Ethan staggered back, shaking his head. The other cells stirred violently, prisoners slamming against their crystal walls, their voices rising in chaos. "Liar!" One shrieked, the sound slicing like knives in his mind. "He will consume you, just as he consumed the stars." Another voice roared deeper, filled with rage. "Do not touch the chains, human. They bind him for a reason." Ethan spun in circles, clutching at his temples as the warnings crashed into him. The chamber shook as if it were alive, the floor vibrating beneath his boots. The central prisoner's voice rose above them all, shaking dust from the ceiling. Silence. Instantly the others quieted, though their faint whispers lingered like snakes slithering through Ethan's thoughts. The radiant figure returned its gaze to him. Calmer now, its tone softer, almost kind. "You feel it, don't you? The pull, the connection. You are not here by chance. You are bound to me. Your ancestors forged my cage, but through you, it will end." Ethan felt his knees weaken. He wanted to argue, to scream that none of this was his fault, that he was just a scavenger who wanted nothing more than to survive another day. But the truth gnawed at him. He had felt something the first time he touched the wall. He had felt like this prison knew him. And part of him, against all reason, wanted to believe what it promised. The prisoner leaned closer, light spilling. "Across the chamber like fire, I am not your enemy. I am your destiny." Suddenly another voice pierced the silence, clearer than all the rest. It came not from the other cells, not from the radiant prisoner, but from deep within Ethan's mind. "Do not listen. Leave while you still can." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. This voice was different. It wasn't pleading or screaming. It was calm, steady, almost human. He whipped around, searching for the source, and then his eyes fell on one of the smaller cells to his left. A faint figure sat inside, chained just like the others. But unlike them, it did not writhe or rage. It simply sat, watching him. Its form flickered faintly, not radiant like the central being, but dim, fragile, almost dying. Yet when its head lifted, Ethan saw its eyes that were not alien, not monstrous, but hauntingly familiar. Human eyes. Ethan staggered toward the cell, disbelief flooding through him. "Who are you?" The figure inside raised its chained hands weakly as though reaching for him, the last of those who fought to keep him bound. "The ones your bloodline betrayed. You doom us all." Ethan's chest tightened, torn between the radiant prisoner's promises and this frail voice of warning. The chamber pulsed with light as the radiant figure roared in fury, its chains rattling like thunder. "Do not listen to that shade. Is a lie? A ghost? A trick?" The frail figure in the smaller cell spoke again, its voice almost breaking. "Ethan, you must choose. Every step you take here decides more than your life. It decides the fate of every world." The chamber erupted into chaos against chains rattling, voices screaming, the ground trembling, but Ethan could hear nothing except the pounding of his own heartbeat and the terrible choice laid before him. One path promised answers, power, destiny. The other warned of destruction, doom, betrayal. And in that moment he realized the prison was not just whispering anymore. It was forcing him to choose. Ethan's breath came in sharp bursts as the chamber shook around him, the glowing cells pulsing like hearts beating in rhythm to some ancient drum. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the voices overlapped into a storm inside his skull. It trembled at his side, caught between the pull of the radiant prisoner who promised answers and the fragile voice warning him of destruction. He wanted to run, but the walls were sealed, and the way out no longer existed. He had been brought here for a reason, and the prison would not release him until he acted. The radiant figure leaned forward, its chains straining, sparks of light cracking across them like glass under pressure. "One touch, Ethan. That is all it takes." Free me, and I will show you who you truly are. No more lies. No more wandering in shadows. The voice rolled like thunder, yet it wrapped around him. Like a promise of safety, a hand reaching from the fire. For a fleeting moment, he imagined its answers to the questions that haunted him since the first whisper. A truth bigger than his small, drifting life. Legs moved without his consent, each step heavy, dragging him closer to the central crystal. Prison. But then came the other voice, soft but steady, cutting through the chaos like a blade of calm. Ethan, think. That thing does not want to free you. You wants to use you. The chains were built for a reason. Do not let history repeat. He stopped, his boots echoing on the floor. His eyes darted to the smaller cell where the human-like figure sat, faint and dim. Even in its weakness, its voice felt alive, almost painfully real. Its words reached deeper than the radiant prisoner's thunder. And yet doubt gnawed at him. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling inches from one of the glowing chains. His skin prickled, warmth surging up his arm, his veins burning like molten fire. The chain seemed to recognize him, sang at his touch, releasing a sound so pure and sharp it made his eyes water. His vision blurred, colors twisting, and for an instant he saw himself not in his suit. Not as Ethan Cole the scavenger, but as something else, something greater. Wrapped in the same light that bound the radiant figure, the prisoner roared in triumph, its voice shaking the chamber. Yes, do you feel it? The bond. Your blood remembers. You were always meant to break these chains. Ethan gritted his teeth, his hands still pressed against the chain. His body shook violently, caught between pulling away and pushing harder. The fragile prisoner in the smaller cell cried out, its voice cracking but desperate. No, if you release him, the stars themselves will burn. Please, Ethan, pull away. The chain began to crack under his touch, lines of light crawling across its surface like lightning on glass. A surge of power ripped through him, hurling him backward. He crashed to the ground, his chest heaving, his hands glowing faintly with the same energy that coursed through the chains. The chamber howled with fury and triumph all at once. The radiant figure laughed, a terrible, booming sound that shook Ethan's bones. It begins. You are mine now, chain-bearer. But something else stirred. The smaller cells rattled violently, their occupants thrashing, their voices rising in a deafening chorus of warnings. And then, from the dim cell, the fragile prisoner raised its chained hands high, glowing faintly as though sacrificing the last of its strength. Ethan, listen to me. You touch the chain, you carry its mark now. That means you can break him or bind him stronger. The choice is not his. It is yours. Ethan gasped, staring at his hands glowing with living light, his skin crawling with symbols he did not understand. His entire body trembled under the weight of realization. The radiant prisoner strained harder against its bonds, cracked spiderwebbing. Across its chains, shards of light falling like broken glass to the floor. The others screamed, warning, pleading, raging. And Ethan, caught between two destinies, finally understood one terrible truth. He had already started something he could not stop. The prison had awakened, and so had he. The chamber was no longer stilled, breathed alive with light and shadow. Chains rattled like thunder. Fragments of crystal raining from the ceiling as the radiant prisoner pushed against its bonds with growing strength. Each crack in the chains sent waves of heat flooding the chamber, forcing Ethan to his knees. Hands glowed brighter, the marks etched across his skin burning like fire. Every heartbeat screamed with a terrible truth. He was the key. And now the prison would not let him leave until he chose. The radiant figure's voice shook the walls. Rolling through Ethan's mind, "You are mine, Ethan. This prison was meant to hold me, but it recognized your blood. Only you can break it. I do this, and I will make you greater than your kind ever dreamed. You will walk among stars as their master." The words hit him like a drug, searing, intoxicating. I saw visions in his head, himself standing tall above worlds, commanding light, bending galaxies. For a breath, he wanted it. He wanted to be more than just a scavenger. more than the boy lost in endless drift. But then came the other voice, weak but sharp, cutting through the storm. From the dim cell, the fragile figure spoke, its human eyes locked onto his. Ethan listened to. Me, he does not want freedom. He wants conquest. I fought him once, long ago. We bound him here, but only for a time. That time ends now. You carry the chains mark because your bloodline built this prison. You are not his servant, you are his jailer. Ethan staggered, clutching at his head as both voices tore through him. One offered glory, the other warned of ruin. The chains shook harder, shards of radiant crystal slicing through the air. The radiant being leaned forward, its face fierce with hunger, its light searing Ethan's eyes. Do not listen to the shade. It fears me, as all do. You feel the power in your veins. You cannot deny what you are. Free me, and I will make you whole. The frail prisoner's voice cracked, but its words struck deeper. If you break the chains, he will not stop. He will rise, and everything you love, every world you could ever call home, will be burned to dust. You can end it here, Ethan, but it will cost you everything. Ethan's body trembled, torn apart by the weight of the decision. He raised his hands, the glowing marks blazing brighter than ever. The chains answered him, vibrating in rhythm with his heartbeat. Power surged through him, power to shatter them more, to strengthen them beyond repair. The radiant figure's eyes widened, sensing his hesitation. Do not dare, you are mine. It roared, its fury shaking the chamber. The ground split beneath Ethan's feet as the prison itself convulsed. He could feel time narrowing, the choice demanding itself now or never. He thought of the visions of power, of becoming more than human. But he also thought of the fragile prisoner's words of sacrifice, of responsibility, of ending a cycle before it destroyed countless lives. His chest heaved as he shouted into the storm, voice breaking, no more lies, no more chains except the ones I choose. With a cry that tore from the depths of his soul, Ethan slammed his glowing hands against the fractured chains. But instead of breaking them, he poured everything he had into binding them tighter. The marks across his skin spread, glowing brighter, burning into him as though carving the prison's weight into his very being. The chains reformed, sealing themselves with a blinding light, stronger than before. The radiant figure screamed, its fury shaking the stars themselves. Its power crashed against Ethan, but he held on, even as pain ripped through his body. His bones felt like they would shatter, his mind like it would break, but he refused to let go. He was no servant, no. Master, he was the jailer. And with the last of his strength, he forced the chains shut. Silence. The chamber grew still. Radiant prisoner collapsed back into the heart of its prison, bound tighter than ever, its voice fading into a whisper of rage. Ethan fell to the ground, his body glowing faintly, his skin scarred by the marks of the chains. He could barely move, but he was alive. The frail figure in the dim cell spoke once more, its voice softer now, almost reverent. You chose well, Ethan, but the chains are not eternal. One day, they will weaken again. And when that day comes, another of your blood will have to decide. You are the first, but not the last. Ethan tried to speak, but no words came. Chamber dimmed, the cells falling silent. Slowly, the prison's walls closed around him, sealing away what had been awakened. His vision faded, his last thought echoing in the dark. He had chosen not power, not glory, but responsibility, and somewhere deep within the silence, the radiant voice whispered one last promise. This is not the end, Ethan. Chains can break. And when they do, I will remember your name. The prison slept again, but so did its jailer.